This is 24th sermon of New Testament, the Bible, walk through the Bible. So today let's continue to share the first theme of the creation in Genesis chapter 1 and 2. The overall content of Genesis like a screen, as we covered last week. Genesis is largely divided into the two parts, the primitive history and the history of faith. So last week we were discussing the first theme of the primitive history, creation. We even looked at how God created the entire universe in 6 days. We also shared the concept of the day God created. So we can accept the Bible and think about the creation, but in fact, if you examine your belief a little more deeply, the creation in the Bible can be confusing because it is different from what we have been taught in the school. Because the school teaches that the universe started with the Big Bang 13.8 billion years ago, and the Earth was born in the solar system 4.6 billion years ago. So man with a life of less than 100 years, it is truly unimaginable period of time that this universe and earth were created billions or tens of billions of years ago. However, through various research methods and hypotheses through the science, the origin of the universe, the earth, and the mankind are taken quite a long time ago. But the Bible says that the world was created in 6 days. In addition, it tells the history of the earth about 6 years only. The 6,000 years is from the first man, Adam, created by God in the Bible to Jesus because it provides an accurate genealogy. To say this was written like a novel, it tells very precisely when real people were born and died. Genesis chapter 5 contains a genealogy from the Adam to Noah, who survived the flood judgment, and it tells in detail how long his descendants lived from Adam until the flood. So, if we look at the history according to the Bible, the flood judgment occurred about 1,650 years after creation. And in the last chapter of Genesis, chapter 50, there is a story of Joseph dying in Egypt. Based on the genealogy of the Shem, the eldest son of the Noah's son, in Genesis chapter 11, if you look at the chronology of the descendants leading to Abraham, the time of the history that are dealt with the Genesis is about 2,300 years from the creation. If so, from the time of recording Genesis by Moses, even if you add up the time until the book of Revelation is written, it is less than the time covered through the book of Genesis. From the death of Joseph until the book of Revelation is written, it's not even 2,000 years. It's about 1,700 years. So Genesis is the book that covers the important biblical history and human history, starting with the creation of mankind. So based on the Bible, believing the history of the earth around 6,000 years is not just what the church claims. Even in the history of the world, we trace back from the history where we can recognize and know with the certainty. This can be seen by referring to the genealogy after Adam in Genesis chapter 5 and chapter 11. The historically accurate time is that the Exodus occurred in 1446 BC. If you refer to the first king, verse 6, it is precisely written that the time Solomon built the temple in Jerusalem was 400 years after Israel came out of Egypt. Solomon, the son of King David, who is acknowledged in the world history, ascended to the throne in 970 BC as king of Israel, and in the 4th year after his accession, he began to build the temple in Jerusalem. That would be 966 BC. Then based on this, the year the Israelites left Egypt, since the time of construction of the temple in Jerusalem is 966 plus 480 years since the Exodus, it would be 1446 BC. So there are several different interpretations of application of this chronological year. There is no significant difference from the traditional estimated time, so similar time is used as it is. And because what we are dealing with now is not the year of the king, but the time of the creation of the earth, we will not discuss what the exact year is. We don't know the exact time when this earth and human were created. Based on year of Exodus that can be measured with certainty. If we look backward and add the dates from the Adam to Exodus that Genesis provides, the history of the Old Testament is about 4,000 years. So based on the year 2022 we live in, the history of this earth is about 6,000 years. Last week I mentioned the theory of evolution, which seems to be the opposite of the creation. The world is fighting over the creation or evolution to find its roots. As if looking now, the Bible says about 6,000 years of young earth. If not, the battle over the old earth, that is tens of billions of years old, is what the theory of evolution says. It has been going on for a long time. The story of creation is the part of most collides with the world. Because we were educated based on the theory of evolution in school from an early age, even the youth who attended to church and learned the creation through the Bible became confused. What I am seriously thinking about is because Genesis education wasn't taught in the church. According to a survey by Gallup Korea Research Institute in 2014, 59% of Protestants who believe in creation or the truth. This means that compared to the 80% in 1984, it has decreased by 21% more in 30 years. In this day and age, when more time has passed, the ratio will be decreasing even more. Genesis chapter 1:1, faith that does not believe that God created heaven and earth in the beginning, belief in the Bible but only partially, to believe in Jesus but not to believe in creation or judgment, this is not a complete belief. It is completely just an idol of its own. So we have to have this faith in creation in Genesis, looking at reasons why it was difficult for us to enter this path of faith. Perhaps it is because in school education the theory of evolution was learned as if it was truth, that the whole world proved. So some of you may already know about the fiction of evolutionary theory, or the talented professor of the Creation Science Society are giving in-depth lecture on creation and evolution. Still, from the standpoint of examining the Bible historically in the church, at least we should have a share to rethink about misunderstanding. In the meantime, things related to the evolutionary hypothesis that the world insisted on to destroy creationism. Over the next 2 weeks, under the title of Creation or Evolution, I will try to look at and share based on various data. Listen what I share, then you diligently study science, history, and the Bible more deeply. I hope you to meet God's amazing livingness in person. Now let's take a look at the evolutionary theory the world is talking about. The evolution theory is divided into microevolution and macroevolution. Microevolution refers to small variation within a group of species. Macroevolution is the theory that changes from one species to a new species and evolve into higher organisms. Of these two evolutionary theories, variation within the same species, in other words, microevolution, has been proven to be true by genetics and molecular biology. This does not conflict with creationism. But the problem is macroevolution. It starts with microbe, gradually evolves into higher organisms, and finally into humans. It is macroevolution that constantly evolves into the new creatures that have evolved beyond humans. This hypothesis is the opposite of God's creation of each living creature according to its kind in Genesis chapter 1. This thought, it influenced not only academia but also part of the religious world. Evolution, not creation theory, is being accepted as the orthodoxy about creation of all things in the universe and human beings. Usually when a hypothesis is established in science, after testing it over and over, you have to prove that it invariably produces the same result. It is accepted that it is not a hypothesis, but a factual law. But just like last week, the theory of evolution has not been proven through experiment, even though 160 years have passed since it was first published in 1859. Not even a year or two, not even 10 or 20 years. It has not been proven for over 160 years. So it should be discarded as a false theology, wrong theory. It is still not so, and it is confusing the whole generation to prevent them from coming forward to the truth of God's creation. The many evolution theories that evolutionists have published so far over time, evolutionists themselves who presume other hypotheses, and as a rebuttal of consciousness scientists who were studying the theory of evolution, rather the theory of evolution itself is constantly being revised and the hypothesis itself is constantly changing. Still, it doesn't match what they claim. People who want to properly convey scientific facts are bullied. When they present scientific evidence, they created an evolutionary hypothetical kingdom they want to believe in. The reality is that they drive only the things that are beneficial to them as if they are true. Early evolutionists, including John Lamarck, the French botanist, Charles Darwin, and Hugo de Vries, Dutch botanist, the primitive evolutionary theory, as time passed and science advanced more and more, rather it is criticized by the evolutionists who have come up with new theories. Nevertheless, the evolutionary hypothesis is always criticized by academics when a certain hypothesis emerges. In doing so, under the pretext of advancing science, it has constantly changed its face with new theories. So they kept making argument over the topic of evolution, recent evolutionary theories, so these are representative evolutionary hypotheses from the early 20th century. Early 1900, 40 years after Darwin theory of evolution. Neo-Darwinism, oriented evolution theory, collective genetic theory, modern synthetic theory, intermittent equilibrium theory, molecular evolution theory, characterization, stage theory, etc. Alternative hypotheses that are even difficult to name are still emerging. That is, the theory of evolution itself continues to make excuses without being able to prove the facts. To know the beginning of the mankind, what should I do? If we go back in history from now on, wouldn't there be one at the end? So it's important to know who the one person started it is. No one can say this. Only in the Bible, Genesis. The first person is Adam, created by God. But evolutionists never say the word God. That's why they try to explain this issue without talking about God's creation. Complex imaginary theory that are incredibly diverse and unproven are to come out over and over again. So the more we study, the more science that clearly prove that God's creation is right. Rather, they continue to try to use it to deny God's creation. So no matter how newly discovered scientific theories, even if it is complicated and difficult to explain, the evolutionist intention was based on the premise that it is not created by God, but an accidental occurrence, an existence that evolved from apes. They are merely explaining that their assumptions and imaginations are correct. In the past, they used the drawing based on their imaginations. Now that video is evolving, they made their hypothetical imagination into a video. It is very easy to adversely affect many people living in today. Therefore, regarding claiming the evolution hypothesis, I hope we can make more scientific and reasonable sharing. Through this sermon, I will briefly share what has been argued so far. Firstly, the oldest evolutionary hypothesis about the generation of life is spontaneous generation. This hypothesis with the claim that the life arises spontaneously from the inanimate object that exists in the natural world. It is a hypothesis that living things can arise on their own without parents. The idea that life occurs naturally was a widespread thought in the ancient East and the West society. The idea of spontaneous generation and evolution of life is not the result of the Darwin's research in natural science. It was a thought that prevailed in the East and the West since ancient times. It was a topic that was frequently mentioned in the thought of ancient civilizations and in the mouth of the early philosophers. About 2,300 years ago, Aristotle argued that not only invertebrates, but also the higher vertebrates occurred spontaneously. His thought had a great influence on the spontaneous generation of life, including John Lamarck in the early modern society in 1829. The spontaneous theory, he even claimed that life could arise accidentally from the soil by vitality. However, in 1862, the French Louis Pasteur experimented while proving the biogenesis theory that life does not occur by chance, but is created only from the living things that exist. Since then, the spontaneous occurrence hypothesis is not mentioned anymore. The microscope appeared in 1595. Even after the existence of the microorganism was known in the late 17th century by Dutchman named Anton van Leeuwenhoek, until it was better clarified by Louis Pasteur in 1862. People didn't seem to understand about simple creatures like amoebas and bacteria. So if heat is applied to it, electricity is applied to it, sparks are applied, or lightning strikes where there is water and nutrition, and they thought life came about by chance. But when the science called genetic engineering developed, it turns out that even the tiny invisible bacterium is not simple. The basic substance of life is protein. There are about 2,800 types of protein that make up the body of the single bacterium. In addition, these proteins must be arranged in order. It turns out to be a single bacterium. Protein is made up of several amino acids. Among the more than 80 amino acids, there are 20 standard amino acids that make up proteins. There are 12 species made in the human body. There are also 8 essential amino acids that must be eaten from outside. So, if we only calculate the type of protein that 80 amino acids can produce, 80 must be squared 80 times. Also, in order to generate one bacteria, 2,800 cases should be able to be selectively assembled. To express this possibility mathematically, 80 powered by 80. Even if you try this experiment once per second to create a single bacterium, how many E's will it take? So even if you try to talk about the creation of a virus through the science, it is not simple. It is too complicated and never simple to explain without God's creation. Even if the explanation is complicated and not at all simple, how could it be made by chance? Still, the proponent of the evolution, in the name of evolution, they believe too strongly in coincidence, which is impossible. Science is a wonderful tool for discovering what God has created. If it is misused to rationalize human thought and reasoning, it is not science, but more frightening than superstition. So you shouldn't take it lightly to say that life came about by chance. In the end, the spontaneous occurrence theory is nonsense. There can be no coincidence in the birth of life. Not a single bacterium is created by chance, even you are waiting forever and ever. Human body is even designed to be so precise and intricate that it cannot be compared with bacteria. How precise the human body is, humans don't even know how many hairs they have. The number of cells in the human body cannot be counted. It is said that the number of cells in a mature adult is about 60 trillion. Then even if you generously say that it takes 30 years for a human body to grow, so how many cells are made per second? Even if all the scientists on the planet come together, they cannot create one cell. And how precise are those cells? One cell is 10 to 100 micrometers in size. Because 10,000 micrometer is equivalent to about 1 centimeter. So 10 to 100 micrometer is unimaginable size. If we had to compare, on the keyboard we use a full stop mark, the dot, in a 10-point font size, it is considered to be divided into about 1/10 of the size. 1/1000th of the size. But what even more surprising is, it is that perfect life lives in tiny cells that cannot be seen with the naked eyes. Cell membrane, cytoplasm, ribosome, lysosome, endoplasmic reticulum, mitochondria, nucleus. There is a chromatin in a nucleus. If you pull them out in a row, you get 1 meter, 74 centimeter. In a place smaller than the little dot, a perfect human blueprint has been entered. That this happened by chance naturally, it really doesn't make sense. There is no way this could happen on its own. That's why evolutionists can't deny this fact, so it's difficult. It was argued that the occurrence of life by chance occurred only once. So false hypothesis, another abstract, delusional hypothesis continues to be added. As we shared last week, although evolution theory is not a science, it is an erroneous hypothesis behind the insistence that people keep denying it. There is a very evil, satanic conspiracy. Therefore, it cannot be denied that it is a superstition disguised as science. They believe in a God called accident. Evolution isn't philosophy. It's not an accident, not a science. It is a superstition. It is the ultimate of the sin that believes even in the microbes and that rather believes that they were monkey than God's creation. You have fallen to Satan's deception, so the spontaneous generation hypothesis is nonsense. Gradual evolution, number 4, gradual evolution hypothesis. Phyletic gradualism. Simple evolution has been slow. It is claimed that it has been carried out over a very long period of time. However, when looking at the strata and looking at the fossil, this is not the case. Because if you evolve from a monkey to a human, there must be an intermediate stage of transformation in which the evolutionary process, and there should be a lot. There is no linking such a mutation process. When they first argued for the theory of evolution, there must be a lot of fossil data just like that. Of course, there must be. Until now, 160 years later, there are not enough fossil data to prove it. So perfectly, most of them have a few ridiculous bones and have been completely imaginary, painted, or although some discoveries have recently found an evidence, it is also only the addition of forced interpretation and absurd imaginations. So they've already made up all the hypotheses, find only evidence that fits their imagination of it may and should be. Most of them fit within the framework they have set. Next week I'll share some of the data that evolutionists insist on. Always the problem is if you follow the gradual occurrence hypothesis. Evolution must continue even now. But in every society in this world, there are no such people in the intermediate stage of the transformation. There is absolutely nothing that could be link in the evolution. Could be a link in the evolving stage of mutation. So what evolutionists say now, they don't know why. But evolutionist is stopping today. It's not stopped. Evolution has never started. Scientifically, physically, chemically, geologically, thermodynamically, there is no basis for evolution. So now evolutionists insist on punctuated equilibrium. When a species appears, it is theory that the species survive without evolution for a quite long period of time. organism hardly evolves for a long time in a state of equilibrium in which the ecosystem is stable. As the equilibrium is disrupted by ice ages, meteorite impact, etc., it evolves or disappears in the instant. So whatever the argument, because the evolutionary hypothesis is not true, as science develops, it continued to be denied by the science. A new alternative hypothesis is emerging. If the hypothesis is wrong, you have to admit it and investigate and look at it from a different angle. But it is holding on to what is wrong and continuing to go beyond the hope. And they insist on false belief and superstitions. So the gradual evolution hypothesis is wrong. And the mutation hypothesis, the mutation theory, it is argued that the mutation must have accumulated through the mutation and thus evolved. No matter how many theories are made, they can't be proven well. One of the theories that has not been put down so far is the mutation hypothesis. That is, this is because the mutations are phenomena that cannot be explained. It is true that there are mutations. Even now, mutations do occur from time to time. But it's rare. Mutation in nature is only about 1 in 100,000 chances. And this mutation theory, with the advent of the Mendel's law of inheritance, it became more difficult to explain. Mendel's law of the inheritance were published in 1865. At the time, people fell in Charles Darwin's theory of the natural selection. They had ridiculed a variable theory that would later prove disproportionate to Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. Looking at the shape of the mutation so far, it turns out to be harmful. There was no mutation in the superior side. Even if there is a mutation, it wasn't healthy, it's better shape. And it didn't come out that way. Rather, it came only the weaker, lacking, lost, deformed, curved. So far, no superior mutation has been found. But how could mutation create such an amazing being like a human? There is no one thing such amazing being like a human. There is no such thing as the movie X-Men. The movie is entertaining, but this also comes out of the imagination of those with an evolutionary hypothetical worldview. In a more negative way, it can be said that it is a movie that instills a forced worldview that makes it impossible to believe in God's creation. So the mutation theory is also speculation. The theory of use and disuse. Theory of use and disuse. Theory of use and disuse is a hypothesis that was claimed even before Darwin's Origin of Species was published. It was claimed by the French biologist named John Lamarck. It is argued that the living things have an ability to adapt the environment. So organs that are frequently used to develop and organs that are not used to disparate and disappear. That's why the giraffe's neck is so long, because giraffes are running out of grass. On the ground, there is a theory that the neck is getting longer as it keeps trying to lengthen its neck to keep eating things from tall tree. But from the scientific point of view, traits are not inherited. If you give birth to a mouse with its tail cut off, it will not come out without a tail. Look at the picture on the screen. There are men and women who are such a big muscle. Because these two people get married and have children, from the moment of a child was born, did baby come out with the king muscle on his body? No. Just because she had a cosmetic surgery doesn't mean her child will come out with a pretty face. The theory of use and disuse sounded plausible when there were no scientific verification. I came to realize that science has advanced and the truth has been shown. The theory of natural selection theory, the theory of the survivor of the fittest. In a competitive society, those who are strong and adapt well to the environment will occupy this land. So the weak are culled. As a result, a strong female remain and a strong male. It is argued that it must have evolved to be better. After good breed was born, this is where the story of survivor of the fittest comes from. Charles Darwin wrote this in his book, The Origin of Species. This natural selection theory has come to be established as general concept of evolution. But in this world, as Darwin said, only the strong survive. Absolutely not. Have only the strong survived in the world right now? Are there more rabbits or lions in this nature in which we live? More cats or more mice? The strong remain the weak, and the weak disappear is not right. Rather, strangely, strong things can't have babies. They do not raise well. Only 1 out of 4 lions mature to become an adult lion. Alligators lay about 460 eggs at a time. Half of the egg become food for animal, and half of the baby crocodile that hatches from the egg become food for other animals. After 7 years, 1 or 2 out of the 60 animals will grow into adults. What if the lion is too strong and as fertile as the mouse? When the strong eat up all the weak in the world, they won't have anything to eat later. They will eat each other. Then in the end, wouldn't the surviving one become extinct by fighting each other for food? So if you think about natural selection a bit, it doesn't make sense. Well, so evolution has been with these unconfirmed hypotheses for so many years. As if the fact have been confirmed, they are wearing the cloth of science and causing people to fall into chaos. What is the first condition to be a scientific fact? Must be observed and witnessed. Hypothesis is established in the theory. Then the abstract to the hypothesis tested to see if it is correct. And since it has been proven, it becomes a scientific fact only when the same results are obtained, no matter when, where, who, how many experiments are tested. But the theory of evolution has only been overturned for 160 years. Don't forget that claims have never been witnessed to be true. It is certain that the hypothesis was established, evolution hypothesis. So has it been proven through the experiment? Even though 160 years have passed since the evolution hypothesis was presented, it has not been proven. So now we have to remove the word theory from and call it evolutionary hypothesis. So our children can think of a hypothesis that there are many things that are not even hypothetical. But what if you try to deceive people by pretending to be science with an unproven hypothesis? I hope that we can have eyes that can discern these facts well. We talked about the evolutionary hypotheses that have emerged so far. One more thing, let's take a look at what evolution doesn't make sense even from the physical point of view. The second law of the thermodynamics, that is called the law of energy decrease. In other words, the law of increase of entropy. What is this? Whether you use it or not, if you let anything stand still, the disorder increases over time. There is no such a thing. I bought a used laptop, left it for a few years, and it became new. No matter how much you buy or a new one, if you leave it unused, as time goes by, it gets more and more worn out, leaving only dust behind. As time goes by, it's not about evolving in order to get better. What was there was becoming disordered and outdated. The more you are exposed to the chaotic energy, wind, rain, heat, that it wears and faster. All substances in nature are, if you leave it alone, even if you know energy is applied, it is law of physics, a law of science, law of nature to become crumbly according to the law of energy reduction. So finally, the sun cools down and the Earth's magnetoelectric force and orbital force also drop. After all, there will become a time when energy cannot be obtained anywhere in this world or the universe. As time passes, it becomes a thermal equilibrium state. No energy flows anywhere. It is a state in which energy cannot be obtained from anywhere. This is what science discovered is truth in the order of nature created by God. So even though this physical theory, evolution never occurs in the natural world. Even from the physics point of view, creation is right. Evolution is, at first there was no order. It is said that over a long period of time, unimaginable orders were created by nature. It is making an argument against science. The Bible, in the beginning there was perfect order by God's creation. It tells that order has been destroyed over time, losing its original appearance and becoming more and more broken. What is the real truth? The Bible is not science. From the scientific point of view, creation is rather logical, realistic, and scientific. The theory of evolution is unscientific, illogical, and to be precise, it is unconscionable. It's a strange religion. Does this sound harsh? If evolutionists claim that because they don't know what we are talking about, they wouldn't be called unconscionable. But since they all know and make a compelling claim, it goes beyond unscientific to say that it is unconscionable and immoral. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. The Bible is so easy. It is telling us of faith that anyone can hear and believe. The Bible begins with faith and ends with faith. It is a letter from the living God that can only be seen by faith. You have to read the Bible with these eyes of faith, not superstition and myth. You will come across the living works of God that you can understand and believe even with scientific facts. The earth gives forth living creatures according to their kinds. When God commanded this in the beginning, in fact, living thing in this world, it was created according to its kind. Many species that have already become extinct in history, for example, things like a dinosaur. Don't forget that these were the product that God created and shaped with the word. When you try to lock God in the people's understanding and logic, everything becomes incredible and doubtful. When we meet God by faith and see the world, there will be history in which all of this will be understood very reasonably, even as scientific fact. Faith comes first, then understanding. Nowhere in the Bible does an ancestor of faith become the ancestor of faith because they knew the understood God and understood God. They didn't understand everything. When they lived a life of obedience to God first by faith, they became the father of faith where amazing works and a miracle appeared. By faith in God, who created this amazing universe and gave it to the man, meet the great truth of God. I hope that you will live each day precisely. Today we look at the theory of evolution among the topic of creation or evolution. If you find out that you are wrong from the scientific point of view, we have to change the fundamental idea of that approach. We look at the history of those who denied God until the end without abandoning their wrong stubbornness. Through this fact, the proponent of the evolution are saying what they want to believe, not the truth. But by discerning well this reality, how much it is deceiving as if it were true. We pray that we will live a life of faith. Let's continue exploring the same subject next week. If you look closely at the theory of evolution, then we believe in God's creation. You can see that it demands an even greater belief that must be accepted as fact. That is not true. God is the object of faith, not of understanding. He said that he would believe only if he understood the works of God, the Creator, with the small limits of the human being, and he would be on the way to destruction. In relationship with people, when you have faith, you can see things you couldn't see. In relationship with God, like Abraham, like Peter, if he start with faith, if everything that I did not understand until now becomes so realistically believed, seeing the wonderful wisdom, power of God, you will be thrilled and grateful, not a guess. It can be understood as a true scientific fact. However, you will come across the truth given by such a creator that cannot be expressed with the human knowledge and ability. What belief do you have? I don't believe in God's creation. You don't believe in God's creation? Do you believe in birth, death, and cross of the Jesus? If you do it, you may hear the voice of saying that not everyone who says, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. As we begin to examine the history of Genesis, the first history of the Bible, let's go up to everything stained with the evolutionary worldview only through the faith in our Lord God. To discern the reason for our existence and the purpose of the life, also let's build our faith into a biblical worldview based on the truth of the right word. Science is what makes us discover the fact of God's creation. Let's repent of the living by the accepting false fact without thinking because of the laziness of thinking. I want you to be like Abraham, Peter, who comes to God by faith. As a result of that belief, I want you to become a person who understands and knows wonderful universe created by the God. Above all, do not be lazy with the right thought of the knowing God's true will. By diligently discriminating the word of the God through the history and science, I want you to become a person who lives as a witness of the living God in every part of life we are sent to.